tier.
I would look at the stats and say, how's their NIL program?
Right.
Well, that's a phenomenal segue right there. This is a critical time for NIL to step up and make an impact here for Virginia Tech. So a couple of years into NIL, how can it affect the transfer portal, specifically this offseason and specifically right here in Blacksburg at Virginia Tech?
Well, I think that I don't really think of it yet in terms of the transfer portal. I think of it in terms of retention. We all know there are 3 or 4 or 5 players on this team that must be kept.
Right.
And that work and those negotiations are going on now. So I want to take this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about NIL, which I feel like Tech Sideline has a responsibility to educate our readership and our listenership and our viewership on what's going on with NIL at Virginia Tech. I've stayed back from it because it's trying to hit a moving target, but I think that's coming to an end. So what I mean by that is we've all heard the term collective, and a collective is an NIL organization that I don't want to call it raises. They gather money. And they collect money. They collect money from businesses, from donors, big donors. So that's where the big money comes from, businesses and big donors. And then there's a third leg to it, which is kind of crowdsourcing from smaller contributors. So they collect the money, they sign the athletes to contracts, and then they dole the money out. That's what a collective does. And we've all seen the headlines, some of the headlines nationally. And the one I always go to is Texas Tech. This was several months ago. Texas Tech came out, I think it was Texas Tech, their collective came out and said, every football player on the Texas Tech team will make $25,000.
Wow.
As a minimum. So even the backup offensive lineman who never plays will get $25K. The star wide receiver will get more because he'll have more endorsement opportunities. So that's a collective. So in Virginia Tech's case, they have 2 collectives. There's Commonwealth NIL and Triumph NIL. And then there's a third NRV NIL, which is smaller. So those are the pure collectives that Virginia Tech has. And then there's another organization involved in NIL with Virginia Tech that is just now really hitting the ground running, and that's the Hokey Way. Now, the Hokey Way is not a pure collective. They're a little different. What they do is, and I always have to look at this, they are set up as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we'll get to why that's important here in a second. What they do, and I'm going to read it straight from their website. The Hokey Way annually seeks and receives proposals from charitable organizations across the Commonwealth, so it's in state. Approximately 10 organizations are selected annually to receive services from student athletes in support of the organizations. So that's where a lot of the Hokey Way's efforts so far have been, is in selecting key nonprofits around the state that they want to support. And they themselves are also a nonprofit. So that's the connection part of what they do. The serve part of what they do, and follow me on this, they work closely with collectives and sports marketing agencies. So in other words, the Hokey Way will work with Commonwealth NIL, Triumph NIL, and NRV NIL. And they work with agencies that facilitate NIL relationships with VT student athletes. So what that means is the Hokey Way is not going to go out and sign athletes to contracts themselves. They are going to, similar to a collective, they're going to collect money from businesses, big donors, and they also have a crowdsourcing component to what they do. But once they collect that money, they are then going to funnel it, and funnel sometimes has a negative connotation. They're going to pass it through pure collectives to the student athletes. And what the student athletes are going to do in exchange for that NIL money is they're going to promote the nonprofits that the Hokey Way is affiliated with. Wow. So let's say the Hokey Way is affiliated with nonprofit A. Well, you might see Hunter Couture, for example, promoting nonprofit A through his social media feeds or whatever. So that's the way the Hokey Way operates. And what's unique about the Hokey Way is, since they're a nonprofit, any money that you donate to them is tax deductible. So here's the hook. and here's my pitch to Virginia Tech fans right now, and it ties into everything we've been talking about. From now until the end of the year, any contribution made to the Hokey Way will be matched by an unnamed person/entity up to $200,000. So if Virginia Tech fans pile into the Hokey Way and contribute $200,000 between now and the end of the year, there's another organization or person that's going to match that, and that's $400,000 that can go through the collectives. And it's important because right now Virginia Tech is trying to retain their best players.
Right.
And that's $400K that can be used to retain your best players at this moment in time. So go to thehokeyway.org. Phone, computer, doesn't matter. I've looked at it on both of them. And the beauty of thehokeyway.org is you don't have to scroll either at all or very far before you see the button that says donate. Click it. It's an easy process. I looked it up this morning. Our last podcast last week has 5,500 views. Now, that doesn't mean somebody watched the entire thing, but it's got 5,500 views on YouTube. If all 5,500 people contribute $10, that's $55,000. The other entity will match it. That's $110,000.
Yeah.
And everybody's out $10, and you get your tax deductible receipt at the end of the year.
Right.
Now, if everybody who watches our podcast donates $100, that is 55. That's $550,000. Am I doing that right? I used to be really
Don't
good
ask
at
me.
math.
I'm a common
You're the math
Yeah.
guy here, not me.
So
It's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money that can be used to retain guys that the coaching staff wants to stay on this team.
And I think most of us know who those players are.
Yeah. And we're not going to sit here and name them because, if we don't name other players,
Right,
that looks bad. But you all know who they are. You know who Virginia Tech's best players have been this year, and that's who the coaching staff knows it too, and that's who they're trying to retain. So if you're watching this archived, if you're watching it live, keep watching and keep listening. If you're watching or listening archived, hit pause right now. Go to thehokeyway.org, click donate, and come back in 2 minutes because that's all it's going to take.
And also look at the people who are involved in the Hokey Way when you're on the website.
I meant to mention
a lot of very impressive people.
Yes.
Yeah, Virginia Tech alum.
Yeah.
Athletic alum.
Lots of them.
They have a very impressive board, so let me list them. Jim Petrine, board president. Jim Pearman. These are names that if you've been involved in Virginia Tech governance and fundraising, you recognize these names. Jim Cowan, who is the legal part of it, I believe. Justin Robinson, we all know who that is.
Yep.
Nick Rush, who is the principal of Commonwealth NIL.
Okay.
So again, there are people on the Hokey Ways board who represent Triumph and Commonwealth. Bridget Ryan Berman.
She's been the CEO of a lot of big
Google
companies.
Bridget Ryan Berman. You will be very impressed.
She's a tech grad who's been a CEO of multi-million-billion-dollar companies across the
you
world.
will recognize.
Yes.
Yes, she has a very impressive resume. Tyrod Taylor. I'm not sure if you
Who's
guys
that?
know who that is. I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Jayla Tolbert. Jalea. Well, okay. So
Former volleyball player.
Well, it's a former volleyball player. Thank you, David. And then Kelly Woolwine, Kelly started Hot Route NIL that merged with Triumph.
Gotcha.
So I believe Jim Cowan is the principal from Triumph. So you can see the relationship between the Hokey Way and the other collectives, but that's a super impressive group of people. So that's my pitch.
Comments has already donated.
Somebody in the comments has already
Thank you.
donated.